wax lyrically about what you do, the things that you've achieved, and from the conversation I've had with you. But we give all our guests the chance to intro themselves. That way, I don't say anything wrong and make a fool of myself. And then, secondly, you get to say all the right things. So, if you could tell us about what you do and who you are, please.
Ben, Sean, thanks for having me on the show. I think in short, I'm the high performance manager at Ballz, and my responsibility is mainly seeing that the coach, the head coach Frans Ludeker, I do everything for him outside the four lines and be his right hand man so that everything within the four lines can be managed by him and the other coaching staff. Thus, meaning player contracting, recruitment, retaining, release of players. That's all my responsibility. Management teams together, obviously, with a coach. So, in short, basically managing and coordinating everything outside the four lines.
Interesting terminology that, because it's actually that it helps us outside the four lines. So when you say high performance, of course, it's not just when those guys run in the field. Everything that happens as a rugby player is high performance orientated. So, say for instance, now and get into exactly your sort of week to week running, but everything that happens from your side, the first time you look at a player, you're looking at high performance and how they can fit in with in a high performance structure. From there, you obviously then approach them. Let's just get to the stage where you then give them a contract. They then get into that team and they know straight away what their role is, so to speak. And you've already had a sort of brief as such from the coach. Do you guys sit together? Okay, say now you're sitting with the head coach. Does he then say to you, okay, Alexander, we're losing players in this area here. We're not quite strong enough, say, in this area here. Do you have like a brief on an ongoing basis of players you're looking to get? Or are you just looking for exceptional qualities that you then will then find a place for?
I think it's horses for courses. I think if you look at junior players specifically, recruiting for junior level, you're always looking to, one of our business pillars is to recruit the most promising and talented players throughout the country. So
Right.
if you look at junior players or school leavers, under 19s, under 21s, you basically looking to contract the most talented individuals playing the game. If you look at senior level, the coach and I have regular discussions 2-3 times a week, and he discusses then with his various coaching teams to see what have we got in the pipeline, managing the players coming through, who are we losing at senior level, what's they feel about players we should contract in from outside the union if we don't have a junior coming through the system. So there's constant discussions and planning around it, and obviously the planning of the pipeline as a whole. It's so important that you don't kill your juniors coming through from the bottom. So the mixture must be right, and obviously the most important thing is to have continuous discussions with your players on what's their plans. I think Frans and I have had various discussions with the seniors that moved on now since November or even earlier than that last year. So the whole time we've been kept in the loop, what's their plans. We were able to see can we make it work for them and manage to keep them in South Africa. Unfortunately, things didn't work out as planned, but we were aware of their situation and their decision, and based on that we could be proactive and make our decisions going further. So
Right.
we've got regular meetings on that and discussions to plan everything.
Well, I suppose you always have to be that step ahead. Now, have you seen that movie Moneyball?
I have seen it.
That was the most boring sports movie of my entire life.
What? Scandalous.
That was a crap movie, Sean. That podgy guy from Superbad and then Brad Pitt out of character. I thought it was a woeful effort of a movie. Now, I didn't get to the end of that. But now what I imagine is do you guys have big diagrams? I mean, when you guys meet, I mean, this isn't just a chat over a couple of beers. This is a scientific thing you guys are working on here.
Yeah, I think a lot of obviously there is science plays its part, but I think you must always look at a couple of stuff. I mean, our viewpoint is to first contract the person and then the player.
Right.
If you
Okay.
got the right person and the right character, he'll shine and be like a diamond when he's put under pressure. So if you have the right person, then it's easy to mold the player. And obviously you're looking for every union has got its culture and its way of playing and their strengths and their weaknesses. So you're looking for a player that can fit that mold. And I think the coach's needs and his sixth sense should also be accommodated. Sometimes the stats and the science might say this player's not the right guy, but the coach has got a bond or a relationship or just a gut feel about a player, and he needs to back that as well. So there's various stuff that plays a role in contracting, and there's actually a part and a piece for everything of those components. So the perfect thing is to get it all combined, get get that perfect and get it in sync. But obviously science, gut feel, personality, physical talent, and everything plays a role. So there's various factors that needs to be taken into consideration.
Now, another movie. See, I'm doing it, Sean. I'm referencing movies here, just for the sporting neutral. Another terrible sports movie. Clint Eastwood. He looks about 135 from keel over any stage, and then Ali G's wife, the ginger chick with a decent rack. It's called Against the Curve or something. It's a baseball thing. Now, all you said now about having a gut feel, you can work on the stats, you work on these certain things. How much do you get to see? Now, this is what I find very interesting. How much do you get to see of these guys, especially at the young high school level, where you can actually gain and garner so much information on them?
I think what's great about our system is myself and Werner de Beer, who's my colleague, does all the recruitment and the scouting for the school leavers and schoolboy players. So what we try and do is we try and get into the school level rugby when they're about age group 12. So that means stand for grade 6, I think, these days. So then we keep...
So from 12 years of age?
Yes, from 12 years of age. So whilst they're still at primary school. And what you then try and do is you keep a tab on that player and watch his progression as he continues through high school. Obviously, you try and stay in touch with his school coaches. How's he progressing? Talking to him once or twice a year, fly him up to Pretoria, have a medical screening test with him, a conditioning screening, so that you can track and follow his progress. And then you try and stay in touch with him as often as possible. I mean, regular texting, calling him, so that you start building the relationship. And when you have the relationship, out of that you can start acknowledging when you see a player's form is going down, if he's struggling, because at schoolboy level they've got so many factors from outside the rugby that influences them. So if you can manage them and girls, school work, I mean, there's so much stuff, and obviously the pressure of from the parents, because each and every parent lives their dream through their child.
Oh, completely.
I mean, the fathers, they dream to become the sports, and I mean that's how it should be, because they help them and assist them, make everything possible for them to reach that goal. So we keep tabs on them, and then obviously start building a relationship. And when we see the guy's talented and he's got potential to become a player in the system, we draw him into our high performance program. We do a development agreement with a player, obviously in accordance to SARU regulations, which means that you can't have a first right of refusal on a player on an option for when he leaves. So we believe in really establishing and building and forming a strong relationship with a player, so that when he becomes 18 or in his grade 12 year, then we'll contract him to come and further his career at the Bulls. So there's a lot of stuff, and you just try and watch as many games as possible. The most difficult thing about it, Ben, is you don't know how a player reacts to pressure, and you don't know that mental toughness aspect. And the third thing that's very important is the work ethic. And those three things are always the risk factor, because you can only fully establish how well and how strong they are in those three departments when they physically come to the Bulls. Because now you've got, on a daily basis, you can work with him. You see how he performs under pressure. You see what his work ethic is like, not just only on the field, but during training sessions. And then you can start forming. But obviously, that's the gamble we always face in recruitment. So you try and make plans to see how they react on those three components. But it's always a gamble. But if the talent is there, and he's got the mental toughness and the work ethic, I think you're 80% there of becoming a successful player.
So, sorry, Sean, I'm just going to cut in one question, then all yours. Wow, this is so interesting.
Yeah, I know, I'm trying to get stuck in myself. Yeah.
Okay, so obviously you're traveling quite a lot. I remember I chatted to you a few weeks back, and you were going to somewhere like Riversdale or somewhere. I mean, like, how do you manage your weeks? Like you say, you have a colleague. Now, when you say that you're in contact with these really promising players, every now and again you fly up to Pretoria to get a more of a hands-on sort of, well, not hands-on, it's a bit of a wrong phrase, to get a more of a sort of in-depth look of what the abilities are. Now, when you say, is this something that you hear about? Like, do you look at various teams around the country and say, okay, obviously these guys do quite well, so I must have a look at these players. How do you originally come about finding this talent? Is it something that's just obvious to you in certain teams, or are you getting almost like tipped off by coaches or by Craven Week, that kind of stuff?
Once again, there's so many ways. I mean,
because you must be inundated by people saying this is the guy.
We've gotten players that we heard from a guy that we saw in a shopping mall telling us, listen, you must watch this player. We've found players by just watching a rugby day, for instance, 2 years ago. I can't name the specific tournament, unfortunately, but we went there in Cape Town. We sat there from the beginning to the end to find one player. So it just happens, and you build and form relationship with parents, players, coaches, and then obviously we try and watch as many games as possible. I think 200-300 school games per year. We really try and attend all major festivals, all school derbies, all trial matches, festivals, tournaments. So as many games as you possibly can. And if you start doing that from the age group 12, then you start building a picture in your own mind about a player. So you can track his progress. So by watching more and more games, you start to build and form a relationship. And then obviously when you sign, say for instance, you sign player X, that's a high profile player within a union, and you build a relationship with him, he calls you again and say, listen, I think we must chase that guy because he'll also be good. Because any player, as with any of us in business, you want to work and establish yourself with the best. Because when you surround yourself with the best, it's easy to just become better and improve as a player. So it sells itself, and the key players sells the union as well. And I think that's where the Bulls have always had a strong culture, by the players driving it, and the players really seeing that it's core healthy. Because the coaches and management and the CEO and everyone can really push that culture, but if the players don't believe in it and give it energy, then I mean it's worth nothing. So it's such an intriguing thing, and it's got so much wires to it that it's very difficult to break it down to one specific way by of recruiting a player.
Sure.
Sure.
So how many of you guys are actually doing the scouting, like in the network? You say you try to watch as many games as possible. How many?
It's only me and Werner de Beer.
So you two guys watching as much as possible from it.
Yes.
So it's not like so. I mean, I know you say you get like tip-offs from like many like different sources. So would you say it's more from the tip-off that you get? Like you hear that so-and-so is a great player from whatever source, and you must have a look at him. Or are you finding more just from seeing them yourself, and you're just going, whoa, who's that guy?
I think on a percentage, you maybe work on 10-15% you get by tip-offs, and I mean the vast majority, 80% plus, you get by really watching as many games as possible. So it's a small minority by getting by tip-offs. But I mean, Jacques du Plessis is a player that we got, the S120 flanker. He was one of the players we actually saw and then got a tip-off, and then actually knew this is something we must pursue, and we got him by those means. So that fills a very small minority part, but obviously if you get one or two players like that, it's been a success.
So there's been a lot of talk around, obviously because no one else is scouting the level you guys are. Now, I find this quite strange. Professional sport's been around for a while now. Every union's out there to be a success because it's a business, essentially. So it boggles the mind how it's only really the Bulls who are really this pioneering with this. But now with this, obviously there's a lot of talk that comes out. How are these kids actually being contracted? Because the perception is, right? Now this is a very wide perception. I'm on Twitter a fair bit, so I get the background. The perception is the Bulls go out there and essentially that they're paying these kids from a very early age. Now, you must get a lot of flack. People always come to you with what they think the scouting is. So just to kind of set the record straight here, what is the process? Now, let's just say, for instance, you said from the age of 12, if a talented player is seen, identified, you think this guy could be the next Morne Sten, or, I don't know, Jürgen Fischer. How does it go about? Okay, so now let's just say that hypothetically speaking, this guy's talented. What is the processes that you have to ensure that he actually gets there at the end?
Obviously, it all gets regulated and needs to be in accordance with SARI regulations. So what the regulations state is that you can only contract or award a player a contract for financial reasons from the age of 16.
Right.
But furthermore, what that contract says is you can't contract him for an option for after school. So when you can have that agreement in place, but it gives you no security regarding first choices or if he's not in your home union.
It's down to good faith, essentially.
It's down to and building and forming the relationship with a player. So then from the 18, you can sign a contract with him for after school. So if we see, for instance, a player that's talented, say, for instance, at the age of 14, you got one or two options. Number one, we try and get them in our school systems as quickly as possible. So we have very good working relationship with our schools. We try and move them to schools in Pretoria so that they can further their school careers in one of our high schools in the region.
Would this be on a bursary basis?
Bursary basis, yes. And the important thing of that is that you can start building a relationship with him quicker. You see him daily. He's got access to you if he needs it. And we've got high performance squads within our schools that starts from the grade 6 level, and once a week all the top school boys come to train at Loftus. So we've got a weekly training session with them at Loftus.
Intensive, huh?
So we we give them exposure to the system, the coaches, our conditioners, our medical staff, and they've got that support of the system the whole time. So we really try and help this guy and the talented player get as many exposure to become a professional player, because when you expose him to that, it becomes easier adjustable, because when he's finished, it's not that big shock of the professional era that's dawning onto him now. So you've actually groomed him for 5 years to become the professional.
Well, it takes into your thing about seeing what they do under pressure. I mean, it's one thing if he's really good in the Riversdale under 14As, but I mean, you got to bring him to a place where the kids are bigger and nastier than him. Okay.
I think, sorry Ben, if I just can add that, schoolboy rugby has come so massively now. If you look at the Paul boys, Paul Gym, Derby now, I mean, they play in front of 30,000 people. So if you can get them exposure,
it's more than the Sharks this year.
To the highest competition and highest level of competitiveness, it's easier for them to make the step up to senior rugby.
Right. And then you say at 16 is the first time you can actually offer financial reward, so to speak, for their efforts.
And that financial reward must be used for his school fees or tuition fees or training for him to finish and further his school career. So it's not pocket money he puts in his pocket and can spend on whatever he wants. So it's really to help them and give them incentive and assist them in finishing their school careers.
Right, okay. Well, look, I just want to get the actual thing verbatim from you, because there's always a speculation, and there's always, like, every year it comes out, oh, this guy's being paid and his dad got this and that. Widespread speculation. It's nice to set the record straight. So that's essentially what goes on in the system. Very, very intensive. Sean, any more questions before we take a musical interlude?
I was interested by the idea that you put lots of stress on the kid's personality before you monitor his progress, which is obviously a great thing to look at. I just want to see, what are the core traits of the personality that you're looking for?
I think if you look at the Bulls, I mean, our cultures, we've got a strong family-driven culture with strong moral values and discipline. So when you see a player's got those characteristics, it's always easier for him to adjust and settle into our system, because those are the core pillars of our system and the culture we breed there. So those are very important things. And the most important is work ethic and mental toughness. Those are two things that you really can't coach or teach. You either got it or you don't. And if you tick those boxes, I think you're 80% there. Then the physical training and conditioning we can do for you. I mean, you get paid to do that every day. So if we can tick those boxes regarding the player's personality, I think then we're halfway there, more than halfway there.
And I take it mental toughness, that's a gut feel reaction on your part.
That is definitely a gut feel. And what you do is to try and establish that, you do reference checks. So you phone his school teachers, talk to some of his mates, his parents, how does he react to this? Yeah, always a good reference. So then you just go about by asking how does he react in that, how's his school grades and his marks, and we also try and drive a really strong front by letting the players study, because I mean, rugby is just a short-term thing. So we got a really good relationship with the University of Pretoria, where they give bursaries to our players. So we want our players to study so that they can provide for their families and themselves after rugby.
At the same time, they want decent players.
For sure.
It's such a win-win. Great, Xander. Well, we are going to have to take a musical interlude here. Xander, I would love to chat to you about the whole day about this, because I think it's so interesting. And what really gets me, because unfortunately we have to move on, we have to cut off your segment here. What I find so interesting is that people get really irked by the fact that the Bulls are very proactive, and you use the word poaching off air because that's how they see it. It's quite petty in my mind, because there's nothing against the fact that you're offering these kids schooling in different areas. It's a good setup. It's just it strikes me as strange that why are no other unions doing it?
And other unions are poaching more talent, just not on the type of level that the Bulls are. You know? Or the volumes, should I say.
It's like, just off air, you said something about the fact that, I hope I can say this again, you said about the unions investing more time in senior players and senior players alone. That to me just sounds strange, because if you get, again, this is my take on it, if you get players who have been identified from a young age, they're very much incentivized, now they're focused. Now, you spoke about work ethic being a big thing, but it's not a thing that you can guarantee. However, if you are committed to somebody from early age, you've shown faith in them, okay? Faith which they essentially do reward through a work ethic, because they have a focus. Someone said to them, you could be good, and you can be good with us. Now, if, say, for instance, Western Province, I don't mean to bash them, they are my home union, but let's use them as an example. If they are so hell-bent on just investing in the senior talent because they reckon the lighties will want to play for them whether or not they don't really care.
The cream will rise to the top regardless.
Yeah, because they have the impression, like you say, Paul Jim, Paul Boys, 30,000 people. They reckon, cool, those guys will play for us next year. No worries. But rugby's gone past that now. It's not about the fact that my dad played for Province and I'm going to go play for Province. Peter Steph Toy from the Swartland in the Western Cape, he's playing for the Sharks now. Do you reckon? I don't think that the Western Province even had a thing about that. His dad was a proud Province guy. Anyway, so it baffles me how they can't see that the future needs to be groomed from an early age. I mean, you mentioned something about Andre Pollard, obviously being someone who was an early focus for you.
Yeah, I think obviously I don't know what the other unions' approach is, but our approach is as simple as start identifying the players as early as possible, get them into a high performance program, and build a relationship with him. And I mean, a guy like Andre, we identified when he was 15, and really walked a great and long road with him, and now he's committed his future towards the Bulls till 2017, 2018. So wow. That's obviously exactly like you say. I think the players has got the mindset. We saw and identified the talent. We went out there and built and formed a relationship, and he's rewarding us with his loyalty in return and the work ethic and the will to become successful. And what I've seen, and I just want to emphasize that what you said, the moment when you identify them and you start building a relationship, you incentivize them to be goal driven, because you tell them, listen, we can help you become what you want to be, but you obviously keep him on course and on track if he directs from that. So we just try and get to the talented players as soon as possible and as early as possible, and start building a relationship with them.
Well, Xander, we could go on all day, and of course, there's always different stands. I mean, we don't want to knock other unions here. It's just that clearly it's not being done because clearly the players are getting lost. And sure, some guys do a good thing with a couple of good things. Like Province will always come back and always say, yeah, but we know we've got Stephen Kitsoff, we've got Marina Alstad, we've got Ibn Etzebeth. Those have been coming through our whole system. Sure, sometimes the players stick, but we're talking about all the talent around here, and the fact that if it's done properly and done regularly, like your guys' existing system is, it's no wonder that you guys, even in a bad year, are in the Super Rugby semi-finals. Because this year technically was quite a bad year when you think of the fact that the senior players have been lost. And that is testament to the fact that youth has been identified, youth has been groomed, and success has been sort of formulated from an early start. It doesn't start when that whistle blows. It starts long, long time ago. Xander, where can we find you on the Twitter? And how much do you divulge of your dealings on Twitter?
I try and say enough so that people can stay interested in the account, but obviously it's always a difficult thing. My Twitter handle is XANJVR, so just Zan for short, and then the first few letters of my surname, that's Janse van Rensburg JVR, so you can find me there.
Okay, cool. Well, Xander, unfortunately we got to cut you off here. We're running a bit late. Everything else is going to have to suffer, but thanks so much for the insights. Tweet us at Ballz Radio or at Follow the Bounce if there's anything you want to add on to the topic of player scouting and recruitment, and of course how you develop talent in this country. I think it's a prime example, and it's just been great to get your insights today. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me, Ben. Thanks, Sean. Appreciate it.